Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Tricycle's online practice session today. My name is Danya, and I'm Tricycle's online learning manager. And I'm very happy to introduce Louis Richmond as our guest today. Louis is an ordained disciple of the Buddhist master Suzuki Roshi and a lineage holder in that tradition. He's the author of 4 books, the national bestseller Work as a Spiritual Practice, Healing Lazarus, a memoir of his experience with and recovery from a rare neurological disease, A Whole Life's Work, and Aging as a Spiritual Practice. And his forthcoming book is Every Breath, New Chances, Aging with Honor and Dignity, A Guide for Men. So today's session is going to be recorded for viewing afterward, and Louis will start out with a teaching and a guided practice. Then toward the end of our hour-long session, there will be some time for Q&A. And we invite you to come on screen to ask your questions live on video. To do that, when we get to that portion, you'll use the raise hand button in Zoom, or you can also post a written question in the Q&A panel below the video screen. Please note that if you ask a question on video, you will be in the recording publicly available afterwards. And if you're tuning in from Facebook Live, you can also post a question in the comments and we'll add it to the queue and get to as many as we can. So thank you, Louis, for being with us today, and I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Danya. I'm Louis Richmond, and I am the author of Aging as a Spiritual Practice, which has been out for 8 years, but is still widely read and is going to be the topic of an upcoming Tricycle online class. I want to start just by explaining what that means, aging as a spiritual practice. I pretty much came up with that idea and that title really since my formal practice in the Zen tradition ended many years ago. I've been writing books about how to connect what I'd learned in Buddhism to contemporary American life. And as I got older, it was natural to think about, well, how does the Buddhist teaching relate to aging? And so that actually began rather dramatically. I'll talk about this incident in my life more later, but I became very ill when I was around 52, deathly ill, actually. I had encephalitis, which is usually fatal, and I was in a deep coma for several weeks. And when I awoke, I fortunately could still do everything, still had my mind. They weren't sure. But it's an example of what I call in the book, I call it lightning strikes. The lightning of the realization of aging really hit at that point for me. And that really ended up, after several years, that lightning strike became the inspiration for the book. Each one of you, any of you who are over 50 or so, will have your own lightning strike moment, and I'll encourage you to look back and think about that as we go through the session. But how aging relates directly to Dharma is very interesting. So I want to tell you a couple of teaching stories. One was, I was attending a talk by a Tibetan Lama, and in the middle of the talk, he said, Dharma is reality. And somehow it really struck me. It was so simple. Dharma is reality. Dharma is the Buddha's teaching and the truth of his teaching. But just to say it that way, there was something profound about it. He said that his teacher had told him that. So afterwards, I asked him, well, what did you mean? I was really struck by that statement. And he said, well, there's a quality of the Buddha's teaching that you can pick up from reading the sermons of the Buddha. He deflected all speculations, all philosophies, all metaphysical ideas about the world and about existence and about life. And he just taught things that were indisputably verifiable. And he said, impermanence is indisputable. Things change, it's indisputable. That's reality. Dharma is reality. And so then I realized, well, aging is one of those things. Aging is reality in the sense that it's not an idea. You can't speculate about it. You can't say, well, it's just an opinion. It's just a theory. You know, aging is a theory. No, it's not. It's reality. And consequently, aging is Dharma. It's actually Dharma. And as we come into consciously realizing that we're getting older, our body's getting older, and we're moving into the so-called downhill slope of life, we're actually experiencing, whether we know it or not, the Buddha's teaching in our own body. Our body is teaching us reality. And I have a couple of other teaching stories that are interesting about my own teacher, Suzuki Roshi. Suzuki Roshi, at the time that I knew him, I was young. I was 23 or 24, and he was in his 60s. So from my point of view, he was an old man. And one of my good friends, after a lecture, raised his hand and with some frustration said, Suzuki Roshi, you've been talking for a whole hour about all kinds of things having to do with Buddhism. And frankly, I don't understand anything that you said. Is there one thing that you can say about Buddhism that I can actually understand? This was a wonderful student who was known for his straightforward talk. And everybody was nervous. They thought it was impertinent and they laughed. And not Suzuki Roshi, though. He took it very seriously. He waited till the laughter died down. And then he very quietly said, everything changes. It was wonderful. I never forgot it. He met the request with the same kind of simple, profound teaching that the Tibetan Lama did. Everything changes. We could say everything ages. You age, I age. We all age from the moment we're born, actually. But when we think of aging, we really become aware of it when we're older. So here's another story. A lot of the best stories from teachers like Suzuki Roshi come from dialogue, asking a question and getting an answer. So one day somebody raised their hand and said, Suzuki Roshi, why do we meditate? Again, a kind of, I don't know, you could say it was a little bit of a dopey or naive question. He could have answered it a million ways. But what he said was very unexpected, very creative. He said, we meditate so we can enjoy our old age. Now, we were all young kids. I don't think anybody in the room really got what he was trying to say. We all laughed. It seemed kind of a joke. But now I'm 73, older than he was when he made that answer. And I understand it's not easy to enjoy your old age. Your life is in various forms of decline. You don't have the energy you once had. The dreams for your life you had when you were young have not come to pass. You have many regrets. There are a lot of things you can't change, and you have, whether it's conscious or not, a sense that your life is an hourglass where the sand is running out. So I began to understand how profound it was that Suzuki Roshi said, well, meditation practice allows you to enjoy your old age, to enjoy all of that, to find contentment and comfort and really wisdom in the situation of being older. He'd been in ill health, fragile health all of his life, and he had just recovered from a serious illness when he said that. So, and yet he did seem to be enjoying his life. And that was what was so striking. If we go back to the Buddha himself, there's a phrase you find over and over in the Buddha's teachings: old age, sickness, and death. Old age, sickness, and death, as part of the truth or reality of life. And that's one way of looking at aging. It's old age, sickness, and death. And my son, who is in his 40s now, but when he was in his 30s, he told his friends, well, my dad's a Buddhist teacher, and his friends, his younger friends, said, oh, that life or suffering thing, it's so depressing. I can't get behind that. That's not for me. But you know, old age, sickness, and death is not, from the standpoint of wisdom, is not inclined or purpose to be depressing. It's just how things are. And, you know, right now, we're all suddenly thrust, whether we like it or not, into another kind of reality, the coronavirus. The coronavirus is also reality, and it's afflicting the whole world. Everybody has to face it. And like aging, like Dharma, you can't wish it away. You can't say it's just a theory. Some people tried to say it was just a theory. That early on, some people said, oh, it's a hoax. And there was one sad story of a man who kept saying, it's a hoax, it's a hoax. And then he got COVID-19 and went to the hospital and became very ill. And just before he died, he said to the nurse, you know, I thought this was a hoax, but it's not. You know, it's reality. So we're living out the Buddha's teaching, all of us, in this world of this terrible illness and all the implications of it. So in our own personal life, in our own personal aging bodies, in the pandemic that is sweeping the world, we are up to our ears in reality. It's a good time, actually, to encounter and investigate what the Buddha said about reality. He himself, I love the life story of the Buddha because it's kind of like a fairy tale in a certain sense, but not really. It's a wonderfully profound psychological story of waking up and of growing up. According to the legend, he was a prince and was protected from all unpleasant things. He wasn't allowed to go out of his castle or see anything, but you know, as always happens in fairy tales, he broke the rules. He snuck out with his loyal servant Chandra to see what the world was like, and he saw 4 things on the road. These are called the 4 sightings of the Buddha, sightings. And the first thing he saw was a person who was old. Aging is reality. And again, in this fairy tale world, he says to Chandra, what's wrong with that person? Why is their skin all wrinkled up? And Chandra said, well, that person is old. That's what old age looks like. So big shock for the young Prince Gautama. Next, he saw a person who was sick. They were lying by the side of the road, and he said, what's wrong with that person? Why can't they get up? And Chandra, ever patient, said, Gautama, that person is ill. That's what illness is. So waking up, number 2. And the third sighting was a corpse, a dead person. And again, Chandra explained, people die. This is death. And Buddha, slaps his forehead. He never knew that. This is silly unless you realize that all of us as children don't know about reality. We at some point, reality hits us. The fourth sighting is also interesting. The fourth sighting was of a monk, a serene monk walking quietly down the road. And the young prince was incredibly impressed by his calmness. And it was due to seeing that monk that he decided to leave his privilege to enter reality and become a spiritual seeker. So that is the universal story of each one of us as we mature and look for meaning and purpose and truth in reality itself. Each one of us, each one of you has a story like this, undoubtedly. For me, and I call this lightning, the lightning of aging. Lightning strikes. For me, it was that terrible illness that nearly killed me. I woke up and could barely move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't see very well. I was practically dead, but I slowly came back to life. Sometimes lightning strikes in a fairly small way, but I urge you as I move to the contemplative practice for today to reflect. Was there a time, is there a moment in your life where the lightning of reality, of aging, of the truth of impermanence hit home to you? It could happen more than once. Sometimes it happens when you're younger and it changes your life. So reflect on that, and perhaps when we have time for discussion at the end, you can bring that up. We're living in an age of masks and gloves and social distancing. If you live in the first world, the world of wealth and privilege and medical miracles and medicines and antibiotics, we've all been rather separated, apart from the reality that the Buddha taught. But now we're seeing it wherever we go. You go to the store, everybody's wearing a mask, everybody's nervous, everybody's fearful. For the first time in my life, certainly, we're living the life like 500 BC in India, where there were no doctors, no medicines. Life expectancy was 35. Any little cold or infection could kill you. We're living much closer to the ground of how things really are. And it's terrible. Hopefully we'll figure out a way through it. I think we will. But all of us are also joined by this terrible event and have become, at least for a while, in my view, you might say natural Buddhists. We're living through the psychological story of the Buddha's setting out on the road and seeing things that he previously didn't really see. So this is part of what I mean by aging as a spiritual practice, the coronavirus as a spiritual practice, reality as a spiritual practice. So one of the things I offer in my book, and I'm offering in the online class, are a series of contemplative exercises, some of them taken from the Buddhist tradition. Some of them I've created myself, and the one we're going to do today is something that I created out of my work with aging. I call it vertical time. So this is primarily a visualization exercise, so you can do it right where you are. You don't need to be in a meditation posture. You might want to close your eyes, but you don't have to. It's you're sitting in front of a screen listening to my voice, so it won't harm you if you close your eyes. But this is a practice that, number one, makes vivid the unconscious picture of our aging that we actually all carry in our minds. I call that picture horizontal time. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And then there's also vertical time, which is the time that we enter when we practice meditation. So if you close your eyes, or even if you don't, I'd like you to imagine, and this is the visualization part, that you're sitting by the side of a country road, facing the road. The road stretches off to the left, out of sight, and stretches off to the right, out of sight. The road is time. Specifically, it's the timeline of your life. So to the left is your past, your personal past. And to the right is your personal future. And where you're sitting right now is your present. So we'll start with the left-hand side of the road, your past. This is the realm of memory. And each one of you has a lifetime of memories. Think of them in this visualization as road signs, marking important events in your life. So if you look to the left in your mind's eye, the first road sign will be something that happened to you fairly recently, some important event, maybe a new job, maybe a recent illness, maybe an accident, maybe a child's graduation from high school or college, some event. There's a road sign there to commemorate that. And then off in the distance, there are other road signs going back in time to when you were younger, things that were good, things that were not good, your own, let's say, marriage, your first job, promotion to a career, graduation from high school, and then around the bend in the real distance, but you still remember, are your childhood time, younger, living at home with your parents, and somewhere way off there, invisible to your conscious mind, is where the road began, the moment you were born. Each one of you has a vivid road like that. So bring it to mind, picture it. This road also represents aging. Where you're sitting today is the age you are, and all the events of your past have brought you to this point, all the years of your life. Just bring to mind the highlights of your life, good and bad. This is you. This is who you are. This is your unique existence in this world. Okay? I'll give you a few moments to collect those road signs, those memories, and realize that every moment of every day you carry those memories with you. They are who you are. Okay, let's turn your attention to the right-hand side of the road, which is the future. This is different. It's hazy. The further out you go, the hazier it gets. There are only 2 points of certainty in this part of the road. The point where you are right now is certain, you're here. As my teacher Suzuki Roshi said, the fact that you are here right now is an ultimate fact. It is your deepest truth and is the source of all wisdom. That you know, you're here. The other thing that is certain is the point in the future part of the road where your life ends. We know it's there. We don't know where it is or when it is. And a key part of the aging process, the aging practice, spiritual practice of aging, is that with each passing year, that unknown terminus of your life becomes more vivid. You realize, aging people realize that there's more road to the left than there is to the right, and the future road keeps getting shorter. Between this present moment and the unknown future death of you, which is certain, there are plans and hopes and possibilities and fears. Because of the way the world has been overturned, older people are living with a lot more fear. In particular, the fear of illness, the fear of getting the virus and perhaps dying from it, and also financial worries, financial fears. These are two, incidentally, of what's the Buddha taught as the 5 great fears of life. Fear of illness and fear, he calls it fear of loss of livelihood. But there's also hopes. You have hopes for your own life. You have hopes for the people you love. You have plans. Perhaps you're beginning to plan for some kind of retirement, maybe a different home, move to a different place. You can imagine in the midst of that fog of the future, various high points and celebrations. Wedding anniversary, 30th or 40th or 50th, wonderful events. I had my 50th wedding anniversary 3 years ago. My wife and I married young, and we've stayed together for our whole life. So 50 years, that was marvelous. And if I live another 7 years, I'll have a 60th, you know. So that's out there, but will I live another 7 years? I don't know. So collect yourself knowing that the right-hand side of the road is shrouded in mist, and return to the place that you are, which of course actually is sitting in front of a computer listening to me, but in your imagination, you're sitting by the side of the road of your past, present, and future life. And take a few deep breaths and just, you can close your eyes if you haven't already, and imagine this countryside of your life where your whole life, past, present, and future, is spread out before you. This is reality. One kind of reality. Horizontal reality. Reality of time. Yet there is another kind of reality. I call it vertical time. So in a moment, we'll shift to vertical time. So without abandoning the picture of the road, keep it in mind. Reflect on the fact that you are sitting in a particular spot and a particular place in your life. And that spot never changes. It's always just you. And the way that you connect to this spot is through the breath. This is one of the Buddha's great teachings, and all Buddhist meditation begins with the breath. The breath is life. The breath is also time. The breath is like a clock, and each breath is like the slow, undulating pendulum of the giant grandfather clock of your own time. Feel your breath now. This is something, if you're a meditator, you've learned how to do, but feel it a little differently now. Feel it as a different kind of time than the road we've been looking at. On each inhale, the new breath begins. On each exhale, the new breath ends. But it never goes anywhere. It's always just the same, and it's always right here. My teacher taught that each breath is like a whole life, and the magic and the wisdom of the breath as a meditation object is that through it, you can live the life of the breath in the cycle of breathing. So inhaling is like being born, and exhaling is like dying. In fact, another word for exhale, to expire, also means to die. So each breath lives a whole life. That's what the title of my new book means: every breath, new chances. Every breath, your life starts over. So just picture yourself still by the side of the road, but now just focusing on not the horizontality of your life, but the verticality of it. As you feel your breath arise and prosper and then slowly vanish. This is vertical time. Vertical time is your greatest treasure, and it's the way that aging can be a spiritual practice and can be a source of wisdom. Because in fact, each one of us, you may have a picture of your whole life stretching in the past and the future. The reality is that each of us ages one breath at a time. And each of us starts over one breath at a time. We have the word inspire. We're inspired. Well, inspire means to breathe in. That's what it means. So in breathing in, in beginning again, in starting over, you're not really growing older. You're growing wiser. And old age, sickness, and death take on a new meaning in vertical time. It's not something to fear. It's not something to feel sad about. The fragility of life is its very beauty. We don't know what's going to happen, but in this breath, in this moment, we're here. So if you've had your eyes closed, you can open it now and relax and reflect on this landscape that I have painted for you and that you've imagined. The landscape of horizontal time, which is the usual way we think of our life. And then vertical time, which is a different way. And think about it. Where do these two kinds of time meet? Where do they intersect? They intersect in the middle of your body, where your breath starts and where your breath ends. Your body is the temple of wisdom. Your body is a vehicle in which you can experience reality, or things as it is, as my teacher would say. So we come to the end of my presentation, and I'm very happy to have met you in this new way. And I welcome your comments and questions. Danya will help with that process, and you can either pop up on the screen and become a picture and be real, or you can send a text. So I'll turn things over to Danya and let her guide us through this.
Thank you so much, Louis. And start with just one question, which was, Eugene just asked for one more time a description of your meaning of vertical time.
Vertical time means the time of the breath, which your breath goes up and down. It starts in your belly and rises up to your head and falls into your belly. It's vertical. So vertical time means, in a very simple sense, your body and the place you're sitting right now. That's vertical time.
Thank you. So I see we have John raising his hand, so I'm going to allow him to talk and come on screen. Welcome, John.
Yes. Oh, hello. Thank you very much. Thank you for your talk. I really
You're welcome.
benefited from it. And I had an insight, an insight and experience that about when the lightning hit, and of course, probably like most people, it has hit many times. But in my life, I had an experience when I was a young man, well, actually a teenager, and I went swimming with 4 friends, and one of them drowned. And
Yes.
I was in the water. My 2 friends, who one didn't swim, was on the shore. And when I realized that my friend Gary just disappeared, I spent some time searching for him, right? So I couldn't find him. And then I realized after quite a long time that he was gone. But it completely changed my life. And I spent a tremendous amount of time. I haven't actually thought about this or talked about this in a long time, but I spent a long time kind of grieving and crying. And one day I woke up and everything was different. I was completely bright and open and joyful. And I felt like every second and every moment and every person I met. I'm sorry. Wow. Honestly, this is not, I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I remember I was 15 years old, and I would greet everybody with an open smile, bright eyes. I remember one walk home from school where all the houses I passed, I wrote a little spontaneous poem and put it in everyone's mailbox. And my father was flipping out. He couldn't accept or understand how his son turned out to be like such a freak, you know. But the fascinating thing for me was that over the course of my life, I've realized that life is not, although your visualization was very helpful and I saw it, life is really not a straight road, because there were times when I would come back around to sort of an unaware or unawakened place. And over the course of my life and a couple of other, as we all have, events that would wake you up again. And now as I'm getting older, I realize for the first time, I really do see that there is no time to waste.
Yes, well, thank you, John. The road is not straight. If I were to put twists and turns into the visualization, it would be a little too complicated, but you're right. And also, I would say, just comment that your friend's tragic death was a gift to you as a survivor. It showed you at an early age the beauty of being alive. And, I just would comment that people often miss the aesthetic beauty of Buddhist teaching, and they get so involved in the practices and counting their breaths and doing this or that. Look at a Buddhist statue, any statue. Two things. One, it always has a smile. You ever notice that? There is no Buddhist statue without a smile. That smile is iconic. It's there for a reason. And the second is that the Buddha is beautiful. He's not an ugly old man. He's beautiful. That Buddha is smiling and beautiful is a reflection of each of us at our best. Buddha is not a god. Buddha is each of us at our best. Buddha is you. So this moment when you woke up and everything was vivid and bright is a moment of Buddha. So thank you for your story, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. There's a lot of kind messages in the chat for your story. So we have a question from Ryan in the Q&A panel. On the vertical timeline, are we moving in an upward direction like an elevator as we age, or are we fluctuating up and down?
In vertical time, you don't go anywhere. You're always just here. So when you meditate, when you breathe in, you are inspired to start over, and when you breathe out, you let everything go. So it's both. It's not an elevator and it's not a sinkhole. It's just a clock, a vibration. Suzuki Roshi often taught that how important it is to practice exhaling, because exhaling is practicing for dying. And if you become familiar with it, you won't be afraid. It's just another breath. So Horizontal aging is like our more familiar kind of aging, and it goes up and down. Sometimes you feel good about it, sometimes you don't. But vertical time is the eternal present. It doesn't really age. Vertical time doesn't age. You're breathing exactly the same way you breathed when you were 4 years old, and that you will breathe on your last day. There's no aging in it. Okay.
All right, Judith has a question. I'll bring you on screen.
Oh, hi, Judy.
Let me see if I can get the camera on. Just a moment.
You look like a dog today.
Yeah, I know. There's where it is. Wolf. Where is it? I'll start my video. Thank you for the host finding me the right spot on the screen. So let's see if I can get my head more in the middle. So I wanted to check because my formulation might be slightly different or it might be the same. I think of horizontal time as development of personality, perhaps. And it's where a lot of karmic process happens. And then vertical time is that below personality, primal, immediate kind of existence. And it has that dynamism of breath, but it has another dynamism that's not only breath. So just throwing that to you.
I would agree. Horizontal time is your individual personality and karma, and vertical time is Buddha. And yes, there's more to it than just breath, but I only had 15 minutes today. But I think you're right, and that part of the beauty of vertical time is that in vertical time you access your what we would call true nature or deep nature. And another way to put it is that you're Judy and you're unique, and I'm Lou and I'm unique, but in vertical time we are the same, and we are both Buddha. So
in vertical time, it seems like there's a lot more pauses.
Pauses?
Yeah.
Well, maybe so.
We had the lightning strike, and there was like these lightnings that would hit lightnings, you know, but then they'd stop, and then you'd hear the thunder. There was that pause or something. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, I basically feel I agree with you, and it's good that you bring in that deeper perspective. In this unit 6 of my online class, I talk about what I call sacred presence. And those of you who join the class can hear me teach about what Judy would call the deeper quality of what we're talking about today. So that's something you can look at. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Judith and I are old friends, so it's nice to see people suddenly pop up. Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. So Ellen asks, can you give a perspective on facing serious illness and still finding the strength to practice?
Well, I've had 2 serious illnesses in my life. I had cancer when I was 35. I didn't mention that. That was really my first lightning strikes when I was young, and then I had the encephalitis. So I had to do that. Is it Alan? Is that who's asking the question?
Ellen.
Ellen. Ellen, truthfully, I cried a lot. This was hard for me as a man. You know, I grew up in an age where boys don't cry and all of that. I felt kind of humiliated, but it's part of why I wrote my new book for men, because I think men find it harder to recognize the deep truth that illness can bring. And this is my short answer, which is a vulnerability, which is what illness is, weakness, is strength. That's where you'll find your strength. I thought when I cried and when I felt hopeless and depressed that I was failing and that I was weak and that I wasn't coping, but actually that's how I was coping. So we should never be afraid of or ashamed of our collapse. The other thing I would say is that one of the things I learned inside of my coma is that we all know how to die. Your body knows how to be ill. There's great wisdom in the body. Actually, all creatures know how to be ill. We wouldn't have, life would not have survived for 1 billion years if we didn't know how. So you can trust that and look for that wisdom. Crying and feeling hopeless is part of that wisdom, actually, I think. And the other part of illness that's so hard is you don't know what will happen. You don't know whether you'll get well or not. And, you know, that's actually always true every day of your life, but with illness, it's really true. And so you're face to face with how things really always are. We just don't know. So I hope the best for you, Ellen, and perhaps something of what I said will be useful to you. Thank you.
All right, Dan, I'll invite you on screen now.
Hi, Louis.
Hi, Dan.
Thank you so much for the talk today. Got a lot out of it.
Sure.
So I have what might be a slightly maddeningly vague question, but
They're the best kind. Go for it.
aren't they all, right? How does forgiveness fit into the aging process? You know, while being present. You know, I'm in recovery, and a lot of people say, like, look at the past, but don't focus on it. And I feel like I'm in a really good place now and achieved a modicum of peace for a 57-year-old knucklehead. But I struggle with letting go of resentments towards, you know, perceived wrongs. And I wonder if there's anything you can comment on in terms of plugging more into vertical time, like how to be at peace with those resentments and not fight them, I guess. Thanks.
Well, you know, I struggle with that too. I've had, not like you, but I mean, I've had experiences in my life that have been very disappointing, and I'm still angry at those people in some way that they disappointed me and betrayed me. Betrayal is one of the deepest hurts, when you trust somebody and they betray you. So I struggle with that too. I think we all do. It's not just your problem. I think it's a human problem. Probably the Buddha had resentments, you know. And, you know, I've met a lot of so-called wise people in my life. I don't think any of them, there's one who's quite famous and is very wise and very calm, but underneath, he was full of rage for what had happened to him and his country. So if somebody like that can have resentment, then it's okay for all of us to have it, you know. And I think maybe the main thing is don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, it's not a bad thing that you feel that way. It's natural. It's natural. But you know, I can't advise you. I don't know anything about your life and what you're resentful about, but maybe the best thing I can say is that, yes, resentment is real, and don't pretend that it's not. Don't think of yourself as a bad person because you have it, but there's also more in there. Resentment has a kind of surround. It's more complex than just feeling angry and resentment. I think forgiveness and resentment live in the same space, actually. You know, it's not like forgiveness is somewhere else and you have to go get it and cover the resentment over. It's more like forgiveness is in there too. So good luck in working with all of that. It's a universal human problem. I've never met anybody who didn't have some of that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, we have a question from Gerald on how does one process regret on the path, especially from along the line of horizontal time? He writes that
I'm sorry, Danya, how does one process what?
Regret on the path.
Regret. Regret is a growing feature of old age, of aging. The longer you live, the more regrets you have, you know. When you're young, there's two things about regret. One is when you're young, let's say 25, maybe something bad happened, you lost your job, you lost your girlfriend, your wife, got kicked out of school or whatever. But when you're young, there's a sense, hey, I can start over. I'm young, I can do things. And that sense of being full of young energy and hope helps you overcome regret. When you're older, you can't say that. You can't say, well, I can get another job, I can get another wife. Not when you're 75, it's much harder. So I think that it's a lot like John's question, previous question with resentment. Regret is not a bug of old age, it's a feature. It's just there. And, but regret lives in horizontal time, much more than vertical time. Horizontal time, you look to the left and you can see a sign that said, I got really screwed. I really made a bad mistake. The sign says, big mistake, regret. And you can see that sign and it just looms. You can't get rid of it. It's in the ground, it's in concrete, you know. But in breathing out, my teacher said, when you breathe out, breathe everything out, let everything go. You could even practice visualizing, putting that regret into your breath and watching it go out and die, expire, you know, with each breath. Let it go, let it go. But as with resentment, don't beat yourself up because you have regret and you can't get rid of it. That's the human condition, I think.
All right, so I think we have just time for one more. Should we take one more live caller? Marilyn, I'll ask you to come on. Hi, Marilyn. I think you're...
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay, hi. Hello.
Hello.
Please excuse me for wearing these dark glasses. I just had cataract surgery a few days ago.
Well,
So,
good luck. I hope it improves your sight. I'm probably destined for that myself at some point.
so yeah, I'm 70 and so I just want to say to everyone, please excuse me, I'm fully here. But I just wanted to thank you so much and tell you that in January, I was very, very ill with COVID. They didn't know it was COVID. They just said I had a respiratory virus. I was really sick and I thought I was dying. I wasn't in the hospital. I was home and I just couldn't move. But I had this incredible feeling in my whole physical body. For some reason, I thought I was dying just from the way I felt. And when I went to sleep every night and I was meditating, I thought I had some sense of peace. I was not scared. It was incredible. And then as I started to get better, I felt all this fear come over me.
Yes, yes.
wow, it was like this rush of fear. But I have to say that I'm well and I recovered on my own. So at 70, and also I want to say I'm part of New York Insight Meditation, and we have a Sangha based on your book weekly called Aging is a Spiritual Practice. So thank you and thank you.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, listen, Marilyn, I had the same experience when I was in my coma. I was awake in my coma. I didn't know anything about the outside world, but I was awake. And I thought I was dying. I thought I would probably die, and I had absolutely no fear, just like you said. And here's what I think. I think that the body knows how to die. There's deep wisdom that wakes up when you're close, and it helps you. And just like you, when I started to get better, then I was terrified because I realized I was damaged. I had brain damage, and I wouldn't be able to go back to my regular life. And then I felt scared. So I think what you said is very useful for everybody here, is that when you're close to dying, you're not alone. The wisdom of all life will appear. You can't make it come. It knows when to come. You may have actually been pretty close. That's what I would guess.
I felt that it was almost, it's just, I'm so grateful to be able to say this today, because only in our Aging Sangha was I able to share that with people. And I only found out it was COVID when I heard people talking about it months later. I said, oh, I think that's what I had. And I just sat there thinking, I really almost died.
Yeah, well, you didn't have the benefit. Nobody knew in January what it was, and you didn't have the benefit of, getting on a ventilator or being surrounded by high-tech equipment, which I don't know would have been better. How wonderful that you do, all by yourself. And I do think that we know how to die. That's basically what I feel that's all about. And we don't have to be, not everybody gets to be conscious when you die. Sometimes you get hit by a truck, and that's it.
Yeah.
But when you're ill, and this relates to the earlier question about illness, there's lots of resources in your deep organism that you have no idea are there. They're very deeply unconscious that arise to help you. Sometimes they don't succeed. Sometimes you do die. And sometimes they do. And you're well enough to go back and have cataract surgery and see better. So great that you can do that. I hope it's successful when you take your glasses off.
Yeah, well, it already is, but I guess I'm just saying thank you, because it was really after the fact that I had such a deep spiritual experience of saying, wow, I really think I almost died and I was really okay. Now I'm not okay at all about it, but at that moment, I had this profound, deep experience. Thank you.
They say that when Steve Jobs, a very famous person, when the last thing he said while he was actually dying was, wow. And then he died. We have no idea what he was experiencing, but maybe something like what we're talking about, So we can all hope that it goes that way. I have a good friend who's done a lot of hospice work, and he says, people die all kinds of different ways, and you can't always expect it to go the way you think. But in your case, anyway, you beat the great monster, and we're all very happy for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you get to be the last one. What a great final message for everybody.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Marilyn. I will give you one opportunity, Lou, to answer the question for recommended reading on aging, especially for people having anxiety or fear about it.
I'm sorry, say again.
Yeah, so one final question is that the recommended reading on aging for people who have anxiety or fear about it. I have to ask you that one since you've written the book.
Well, it's a loaded question because, I can't exactly recommend my book, but people say it's a good book. couple of other books that are really good. There's a Benedictine nun named Joan Chittister who wrote a book, The Gift of Years. The Gift of Years. She's a Catholic monastic, and it's been a big seller all over the world for years and years. That's a wonderful book. There's also a book called From Aging to Saging. Aging to Saging, SAGE-ING. It's by a rabbi. His name escapes me at the moment, but that's a book that's been around for a long time. And that's also a good book. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of any more, but that's a good start.
Thank you, that's great. Well, thank you everyone for being with us today, and thank you, Louis, for sharing this opportunity.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to continue studying and practicing with Louis, he's offering a new course called Aging as a Spiritual Practice, which starts September 14th. So you can find out more about that at learn.tricycle.org. And you can also find the recording of this and our previous live practice sessions at tricycle.org/live. And you also have an opportunity there to make a donation to support these free offerings. So thank you everyone for being with us, and be well. Thank you, Lou.